What if the man you built your life with, the father of your unborn child, was living a lie so profound it could shatter your entire reality? For one woman, a devastating suspicion forces her to trade her designer gowns for a dishwasher's apron in the one place she should have been. Queen her own husband's exclusive multi-million-dollar club. She went looking for the truth about a secret lover. But what she found in the searing heat of that kitchen amidst the clatter of dirty plates was a betrayal so cold and calculated it would not only break her heart, but threaten to destroy the Emma her husband had built. This isn't just a story about infidelity. It's about the moment a powerful man is brought to his knees by the one person he tragically underestimated. The air in Matteo Thorne's penthouse apartment always smelled of money. Not the crisp, papery scent of new bills, but something more abstract and pervasive. The fragrance of imported lilies, the faint clean aroma of ozone from the state-of-the-art air purifiers, and the underlying rich scent of aged leather from his custom-built library. It was the smell of a life insulated from the grit and grime of the real world, a life Matteo had meticulously constructed for himself, and by extension, for his wife, Isabella. Isabella Rossi. Now Isabella Thorne was 7 months pregnant and radiated the kind of serene beauty that artists long to capture. Her dark hair, once a wild cascade of curls, was now usually tamed into an elegant chignon. Her hands, which once bore the nicks and calluses of a girl who grew up helping in her family's bustling Italian trattoria, were now perfectly manicured, adorned with a diamond so large it felt more like a geological specimen than a piece of jewelry. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple. Matteo, the self-made real estate magnate, sharp-suited and sharper-witted, who had transformed the city's skyline. Isabella, his gorgeous, gentle wife, the embodiment of grace, soon to be the mother of the Thorne heir. Their life was a curated collection of magazine-worthy moments galas at the Met winter holidays in Aspen summers, sailing off the Amalfi coast. But lately the gilded cage had begun to feel less like a sanctuary and more like a prison. The silence in the penthouse had grown cavernous. Matteo was more distant than ever, his phone a constant glowing appendage he shielded from her view. He'd attribute his distraction to the big Westfield deal or a zoning nightmare downtown. But his excuses were wearing thin, like a favorite cashmere sweater worn one too many seasons. Isabella wasn't naive. She had grown up watching her parents navigate the beautiful chaos of a 30-year marriage, a partnership built on shared laughter, loud arguments over pasta sauce recipes, and unwavering support. What she had with Matteo felt increasingly transactional. He admired her, he desired her, he showcased her. But did he see her? The first real crack in the facade appeared on a Tuesday. Isabella was organizing receipts for their accountant, a task she insisted on doing herself, a small rebellion to maintain a connection to a more normal life. She found a credit card statement tucked into the wrong folder. It was Matteo's private account, the one he called his discretionary fund. Her eyes scanned the list of transactions: 5-figure dinners, a custom suit from Savile Row, and then a charge that made her breath catch in her throat. Cartier Fifth Avenue. $85,000. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her birthday had been 2 months ago. Their anniversary wasn't for another 3. It wasn't a gift for her. He hadn't given her any jewelry in months, content that the engagement ring was statement enough. An icy dread, cold and sharp, pierced the warm bubble of her pregnancy. Who was he buying an $85,000 piece of jewelry for? She tried to rationalize it. A gift for his mother. No Amelia Thorne preferred antique brooches from dusty little shops in Boston. A business gift. The price was too personal, too intimate. The denial was a flimsy shield, and the truth, ugly and insistent, pushed its way through. That evening, she tried to probe gently. As they sat at their long marble dining table, picking at a meal prepared by their private chef, she swirled the water in her glass. "I was thinking," she began, her voice carefully casual. "I saw the most beautiful necklace the other day. It reminded me of the stars over Positano." She watched his face for any flicker of recognition, any sign of guilt. Matteo didn't look up from his phone. That's nice, darling. Send me a link. We'll get it for you." He hadn't even heard the nuance in her voice. He was offering to buy her a trinket, to placate her, completely oblivious to the real question hanging in the air. The purchase hadn't been a moment of weakness or a simple mistake. It was a deliberate, significant act he was hiding. The name came to her a few days later. He was on a conference call in his office, the heavy oak door slightly ajar. He was speaking in the low, charming tone he used with clients, but there was a softness to it she hadn't heard in years. "Of course, Chloe. I'll handle it personally. Just leave it to me. Yes, I'll see you Friday at the club. Chloe." The name was like a key turning in a lock. Chloe Sterling, a new art consultant he'd mentioned a month ago, someone helping him procure pieces for the lobbies of his new buildings. Isabella had met her once briefly at a gallery opening. She was everything Isabella wasn't. Sharp blonde, dressed in severe architectural clothing. She had a hungry look in her eyes, a predatory stillness that had unsettled Isabella at the time. The pieces clicked into place with sickening precision. The late nights, the shielded phone, the $85,000 secret from Cartier. Her first instinct was to scream, to throw a priceless vase against the wall, to confront him with the evidence and watch him squirm. But what would that achieve? He would lie. He would gaslight her, call her hormonal and overly emotional because of the pregnancy. He would turn it around and make it her fault. No. She needed more than a credit card statement and a name. She needed undeniable, irrefutable proof, the kind of proof that would leave no room for lies or manipulation, and she knew exactly where she might find it. Matteo's crown jewel wasn't a skyscraper. It was the Aurelian Club, an ultra-exclusive, members-only establishment in the heart of the city, housed in a restored, Gilded Age mansion. It was his personal kingdom, a place where deals were made, secrets were kept, and his power was absolute. He was hosting his annual Investors' Gala there on Friday night. It was the biggest event of the year, and he had already told Isabella it would be too much for her in her condition, suggesting she stay home and rest. The excuse, which had seemed considerate at the time, now felt like a calculated move to keep her away. He wanted her out of sight so he could parade his mistress in her place. The sheer audacity of it stole her breath. He wasn't just cheating. He was flaunting it in his own sanctuary. A plan began to form in Isabella's mind, a desperate, wild idea born from heartbreak and a deep, primal need for the truth. Her family hadn't just owned a trattoria. Her uncle Matteo was a renowned chef who had helped design the kitchens for half the high-end restaurants in the city, including the Aurelian Club. The head of catering, a woman named Maria, owed her career to Uncle Matteo. Isabella picked up her phone, her hand trembling slightly. She wouldn't go to the gala as Mrs. Isabella Thorne, the pampered wife. She would go as someone no one would ever notice, someone who could see everything without being seen. "Maria," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. It's Isabella Rossi. Yes, Matteo's niece. I need a favor. A very big, very strange favor. And you can't tell a soul. The back entrance of the Aurelian Club smelled of bleach, hot grease, and the frantic energy of a kitchen in the throes of a major event. It was a world away from the fragrant lilies and purified air of Isabella's penthouse. Here the air was thick, humid, and alive with the clatter of pans, the hiss of the grill, and the shouted orders of the executive chef, a bald, sweaty man named Antoine. Isabella, dressed in a shapeless black uniform, her hair scraped back under a net, felt a strange sense of coming home. This was the world of her childhood, the heat, the noise, the organized chaos. But the circumstances were a nightmare. Her swollen belly pressed uncomfortably against the starchy fabric of her apron. Her back ached. Her hands, soft and smooth just yesterday, were already raw from the harsh detergent in the dishwashing station. Maria had been shocked by the request, but out of loyalty to Isabella's uncle had agreed. She'd created a paper trail for a new temp agency hire named Bella, assigned to the scullery for the night. "Keep your head down, honey," Maria had whispered, her eyes full of pity. "No one looks at the dishwashers." For hours, Isabella worked in a trance. She loaded racks, felt the searing steam of the industrial washer blast her face, and unloaded plates still hot to the touch. Each plate that came back was a ghost from the party happening just a few dozen yards away. Some were smeared with remnants of caviar, others with a raspberry coulis that looked like blood. She saw the lipstick stains on the champagne flutes, perfectly outlined mouths of women laughing and celebrating, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the club's underbelly. She was invisible, just as she'd planned. Staff scurried past her, their minds on their tasks, their eyes seeing only a uniform, a pregnant belly, and a pair of hands plunging into greasy water. The anonymity was both a relief and a profound humiliation. She was the wife of the man who owned this entire building, yet here she was, scrubbing the remnants of his success off cheap ceramic. Around 10 p.m., the main courses were being cleared. The noise from the ballroom swelled every time the kitchen doors swung open, a wave of music laughter, and the low hum of powerful people congratulating each other. Isabella's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and resolve. It was almost time. A waiter burst through the doors, his face flushed. "Chef table 7. Mr. Thorne's table. They need more of the truffle risotto. And Mr. Thorne is asking why the Dom Perignon isn't being poured fast enough. He's on his way back here." Isabella's blood ran cold. "He's coming here." She flattened herself against the dishwashing unit, her body shielded by a mountain of dirty racks. She turned her face away, praying the hairnet and the shadows would be enough. Her hands were submerged in the murky water, her knuckles white. The swinging doors flew open again, and this time it was Matteo. He strode in like a conquering general, his tuxedo tailored to perfection, his face a mask of irritation. "Antoine," he boomed, his voice cutting through the kitchen clamor, "what is the hold-up? My investors are drinking vintage champagne, not tap water. And the risotto." He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes sweeping across his domain, snagged on something out of place. A familiar profile. A pregnant silhouette that was deeply, jarringly wrong in this setting. He took a step closer, his expression shifting from anger to utter disbelief. "Isabella." The name was a choked whisper. Isabella froze. Slowly she pulled her hands from the water droplets, clinging to her red, chapped skin. She turned to face him, her eyes meeting his across the steamy, chaotic kitchen. The silence that fell around them was more deafening than the previous noise. Every cook, every waiter, every busboy suddenly found a reason to be still, their eyes darting between the millionaire owner and the pregnant dishwasher, who was impossibly his wife. "Matteo," she said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. For a moment, he looked utterly lost. His brain seemed to short-circuit, unable to reconcile the two images, his elegant wife, the lady of the penthouse, and this woman in a menial uniform, her face smudged with grime. Then the disbelief curdled into a dark, potent fury. This wasn't about her. It was about his reputation, his control. "What in God's name are you doing?" he hissed, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward the dry storage pantry, away from the prying eyes of his staff. "Have you lost your mind? Washing dishes, here are you trying to humiliate me. Humiliate you." Isabella wrenched her arm free, her own anger finally erupting hot and cleansing. "You want to talk about humiliation, Matteo? This is insane." He seethed his voice, low and venomous. "You're pregnant. You should be at home resting. Instead, you're here in the filth making a spectacle of yourself, of us." "I came here for the truth," she shot back, her voice trembling but strong. "Because I knew I wouldn't get it from you in our sterile, silent apartment." "The truth about what?" he demanded, his face a mask of indignant confusion. "That I'm working myself to the bone to provide you with a life you could only dream of." It was then that the universe delivered its final devastating twist. The pantry door was propped open a few inches, offering a sliver of a view into the main hallway leading from the ballroom to the restrooms. At that precise moment, a woman walked past, laughing, her head thrown back. She was tall, blonde, and wearing a stunning blood-red dress that clung to her like a second skin. It was Chloe Sterling. Matteo, his back to the door, saw nothing, but Isabella saw it all. She saw the predatory smile. She saw the possessive way Chloe touched the arm of the man she was with. And she saw the cascade of diamonds glittering around her neck. It was an unmistakable piece, a delicate platinum chain from which dangled a cluster of diamonds arranged to look like a constellation. It was brilliant, expensive, and unique. Isabella knew its design intimately. She had seen it on the Cartier website after finding the receipt. Its name was the Starlight Serenade, and it was hanging around his mistress's neck. Here, in his club, on display for the entire world to see, except for the one person who mattered most. The fight went out of Isabella. The anger, the adrenaline, it all drained away, leaving behind an emptiness so vast it felt like a physical wound. She looked at her husband, at his handsome, furious face, and she felt nothing but a profound, sorrowful pity. He wasn't just a liar. He was a fool. He was still ranting, his voice a low growl. To destroy everything I've built over some hormonal fantasy, some paranoid delusion. "Stop," Isabella said. Her voice was quiet, but it sliced through his tirade with the finality of a guillotine. He fell silent, taken aback by her sudden calm. She looked past him through the crack in the door at the spot where Chloe had just been. She then met his eyes, and for the first time he saw not his gentle, accommodating wife, but a stranger, a woman made of ice and steel. "You should be more careful with your investments, Matteo," she said, her voice eerily steady. "Especially when you put them on display. The Starlight Serenade necklace looks beautiful on her. I'm sure it was worth every penny." Matteo Thorne was a man accustomed to being in control. He controlled boardrooms, city planning committees, and multi-million-dollar negotiations. He could read a rival's tells, anticipate market shifts, and bend nearly any situation to his will. But as he stood in the stale air of the storage pantry, the name of the necklace, a name he had never uttered to his wife, struck him with the force of a physical blow. The Starlight Serenade. He had no defense, no lie, no deflection. No amount of blustering could explain how she knew that name. His mind, usually a fortress of calculated responses, became a chaotic mess of denial and panic. He stared at her, his mouth slightly agape, the angry retort dying on his lips. Isabella watched him, her expression unreadable. She had him. The proof wasn't just a receipt anymore. It was the chilling specificity of her knowledge. She had seen it. I don't know what you're talking about. He stammered the words, sounding weak and pathetic, even to his own ears. It was the last desperate lie of a guilty man. Isabella gave a small, humorless smile. Don't you, Cartier? 5th Avenue. A week ago, Tuesday. An $85,000 charge on your discretionary account. For your art consultant, Chloe Sterling, the blonde in the red dress who just walked by. Each detail was a nail hammered into his coffin. He felt the blood drain from his face. The heat of the nearby kitchen seemed to vanish, replaced by an Arctic chill. He was exposed utterly and completely by the wife he had so carelessly dismissed as docile and oblivious. He reached for her, his hand trembling. Isa, listen to me. It's not what you think. It's complicated. No, it's not, she interrupted, taking a step back away from his touch. It's painfully simple. You lied, you cheated, and you disrespected me in the most profound way imaginable. You brought her here into our life wearing a gift you bought with our money. She looked down at her own hands at the massive diamond on her finger. This ring. What is it, Matteo A. Down payment? A retainer fee for services rendered. The words stung more than any accusation of infidelity. She was questioning the very foundation of their relationship, and he knew with a sickening certainty that she was right to do so. Let's go home, he pleaded, his voice cracking. We can talk about this at home, not here. His mind was racing, calculating the damage. He needed to get her out of the club before she made a scene, before this spiraled into a public spectacle. I am going home, Isabella said softly, but not with you, and not to the penthouse. Before he could process her words, she walked out of the pantry. She didn't look back at the gaping stares of the kitchen staff. She moved with a purpose he had never seen in her before. She stripped off the dirty apron and hairnet, tossing them onto a stainless steel counter. Underneath, she was wearing simple black trousers and a maternity blouse. She looked exhausted, but her posture was erect, her shoulders back. Matteo stumbled after her, his mind reeling. Isabella, stop! Where are you going? She ignored him, walking straight through the chaos of the kitchen and out of the back service door into the cool night air of the alley. The city sounds a distant siren. The hum of traffic rushed in. Parked by a dumpster was a modest sedan, a stark contrast to the line of limousines and luxury cars at the front of the club. The passenger door opened, and Isabella's younger sister Sophia got out. Her face was tight with worry and anger. Sophia, a fiery, no-nonsense lawyer, had never fully trusted Matteo. She saw the condescension behind his charm, the possessiveness he disguised as protection. She shot Matteo a look of pure contempt before wrapping a protective arm around Isabella. I've got you, Sophia whispered, guiding her sister into the car. It's over. Isa, please, Matteo called out, his voice desperate. He felt a crowd of his own employees watching him from the doorway. His humiliation was now complete. He was losing control in front of the very people he paid to obey him. Don't do this. Think about the baby. Isabella paused before getting into the car. She turned her face illuminated by the harsh glow of the security light. The serenity was gone, replaced by a clarity that was terrifying to behold. Oh, I am Matteo, she said, her voice carrying across the alley. For the first time in a long time, I'm thinking very clearly about my baby, and I will not raise my child in a house built on lies. I will not teach my son or daughter that love looks like this. She got into the car without another word. Sophia slammed the door, got back into the driver's seat, and peeled out of the alley, leaving Matteo Thorne standing alone amidst the stench of garbage and the ruins of his perfect life. He stood there for a long time, the sounds of his own gala, the music, the laughter drifting from the front of the building like a mocking echo. He had entered his club tonight as a king. Now he felt like a beggar. He had been so sure of his power, so confident in his ability to manage his separate lives. He had viewed Isabella's pregnancy as the final piece of his dynasty, and Chloe as a thrilling, consequence-free diversion. He had underestimated Isabella at every turn. He had mistaken her kindness for weakness, her quiet nature for passivity. He never imagined she possessed the strength or the cunning to orchestrate such a devastating reveal. She had not only discovered his secret, she had chosen the time and place of its exposure with the precision of a master strategist, ensuring maximum impact. She had confronted him on his own turf in the engine room of his empire, turning his kingdom into the stage for his downfall. Slowly, he turned and walked back inside his movements, stiff and robotic. He had to return to the party. He had to smile, shake hands, and pretend that his world hadn't just been shattered by a pregnant woman in a dishwasher's apron. As he pushed through the swinging doors, a waiter rushed up to him holding a silver tray. Mr. Thorne, a message for you. On the tray was a single, perfect white lily, the kind he had delivered to the penthouse every week, and a small, velvet-lined box. Matteo opened it with numb fingers. Inside was her engagement ring. The massive diamond caught the light, refracting it into 1,000 tiny, brilliant shards, each one like a piece of his broken life. The penthouse, once a symbol of Matteo's soaring success, felt like a mausoleum. The silence was absolute, broken only by the faint hum of the city far below. Isabella's scent, a soft, clean fragrance of vanilla and chamomile, was already fading, replaced by the sterile smell of his own hollow victory. He had the penthouse, the club, the empire. He had lost the one thing that had made any of it feel real. For 2 days, he existed in a fog of whiskey and regret. He cancelled meetings, ignored calls from his frantic assistant, and replayed the scene in the alley over and over in his mind. Isabella's final words echoed in the empty rooms. I will not raise my child in a house built on lies. His attempts to reach her were futile. His calls went straight to voicemail. His texts remained unread. He sent a torrent of flowers to her sister's apartment, all of which were promptly returned to the florist. He even drove to Sophia's building, but the doorman, clearly under strict instructions, refused him entry with cold professionalism. He was locked out not just from Isabella's life, but from the life of his unborn child. On the 3rd day, the fog of self-pity was pierced by a shrill, insistent ringing. It was Chloe. He had been ignoring her calls, but now he answered a cold anger, beginning to replace his grief. Matteo, darling, finally. Her voice was a breathy purr, laced with feigned concern. I've been so worried. You disappeared from the gala, and your phone's been off. Is everything all right? No Chloe? He said, his voice flat. Nothing is all right. Was it Isabella? She asked, a note of triumph in her tone. Did she make a scene? I told you she was unstable. It's the pregnancy hormones, darling. She's trying to manipulate you, to trap you. Her words, meant to be comforting, now sounded transparently manipulative. He pictured her in the red dress wearing that necklace, a trophy she had goaded him into buying. He had told her it was too extravagant, too risky. But she had insisted, flattering his ego, telling him a man of his stature should be able to spoil the woman he truly desired. She knew about the necklace, Chloe, he said, cutting through her performance. She knew its name. There was a beat of silence on the other end of the line. What? How is that possible? That's what I'd like to know. Matteo said, the first seeds of a darker suspicion being planted in his mind. I never told her. Did you post a picture? Tell a friend? Of course not. Chloe's voice was sharp, defensive. I've been perfectly discreet. You're the one who has to go home to her every night. The conversation went nowhere. Chloe played the victim skillfully, turning his accusations back on him, painting Isabella as the villain. But for the first time, Matteo was listening not with the ears of a besotted lover, but with the cold calculation of a businessman who senses a bad deal. Something was wrong. The narrative wasn't adding up. The truth came from an unexpected quarter. His business partner and oldest friend, David Chen, showed up at the penthouse unannounced. David was the pragmatic, cautious half of their partnership, the numbers guy who had always been the anchor to Matteo's high-flying ambition. He found Matteo unshaven, surrounded by empty glasses, the spectacular view of the city ignored behind him. Good God, Matteo, David said, his face etched with concern. I've been trying to reach you for days. What happened? Matteo finally broke, pouring out the whole sordid story. The affair. The necklace, Isabella's discovery, her departure. He expected a lecture, or perhaps some awkward sympathy. Instead, David listened with a growing, intense focus. The gala, David said slowly. Chloe Sterling was there with you. Not with me, Matteo corrected. She was there, as a guest. And you've been seeing her for how long? A couple of months. About that. Why? David walked over to the window, looking down at the cityscape they had conquered together. We lost the Westfield bid, Matteo. Matteo blinked the news, barely registering through his personal turmoil. The Westfield Tower was supposed to be their magnum opus, a legacy project. How our bid was perfect, aggressive but secure. No one could have beaten it. Someone did, David said, turning back to face him. Sebastian Vance. Sebastian Vance was their arch-rival, a ruthless developer with a reputation for corporate savagery. Vance always seemed to be one step ahead, anticipating their moves with uncanny precision. Vance's final bid came in at the last possible second. David explained, his voice grim. It was just under ours, just enough to win, but high enough that it seemed like he came to the number independently. But the financing structure, the phasing of the construction, it was almost identical to our proprietary model. It's like he had a copy of our playbook. The implication hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. We've been leaking information for months, Matteo, David continued. Small things at first, a subcontractor negotiation, a zoning variance application. I thought it was just bad luck. But the Westfield deal, this is catastrophic. I've had a forensic team going through our servers for the past 48 hours. The breach isn't digital. It's human. Matteo felt a cold dread creep up his spine. He thought back over the last few months. The late-night meetings with Chloe, supposedly about art, that often strayed into discussions about his work, his frustrations, his ambitions. He had complained about the Westfield project, boasted about his innovative financing model, vented about the obstacles. He had, in essence, handed her the keys to his kingdom. Chloe Sterling. Matteo said the name, tasting like ash in his mouth. David nodded grimly. I did some digging on her this morning. She's not just an art consultant. Her company, Sterling Art Advisory, received a 7-figure consulting fee 3 days ago. The payment came from a shell corporation. I traced it back. The parent company is owned by Sebastian Vance. The truth was so much uglier, so much more devastating than simple infidelity. The affair hadn't been a crime of passion. It had been a business transaction. Chloe wasn't his mistress. She was a corporate spy. His ego, his attraction, his desire for novelty. They had all been weapons she had expertly wielded against him. He thought of the necklace. The Starlight Serenade. It wasn't a lover's gift. It was a bonus, a payment for services rendered, the ultimate symbol of his foolishness. He had paid $85,000 for the instrument of his own destruction, and he had allowed his enemy's agent to wear it in the heart of his own club while his pregnant wife washed dishes in the basement. The humiliation was so profound, it was almost surreal. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was existential. Isabella had left him because he was a liar and a cheat. But the professional ruin, that was all his. He had betrayed his own company, his partner, his employees. He had been so blinded by a pretty face and a clever line that he had jeopardized everything he had ever worked for. What do we do? Matteo asked, his voice a hoarse whisper. He was no longer the king of the city. He was just a man in a room, his life and his company crumbling around him. David's expression was hard as granite. First, you pull yourself together. The man I built this company with is not a victim. He's a fighter. Second, we go on the offensive. We'll get lawyers, investigators. We'll expose Vance and Sterling for the corporate pirates they are. It will be ugly, and it will be public. He paused, his gaze softening slightly. But before any of that, you need to figure out what's actually important, Matteo. Because from where I'm standing, you didn't just lose a deal. You lost everything that matters. David was right. The battle for his company was just beginning. But the war for his soul, for the family he had so carelessly thrown away, seemed already lost. He looked around the silent, opulent penthouse, and for the first time he saw it for what it was, a beautifully decorated empty box. The aftermath was not a quiet reckoning, but a public crucifixion. Matteo and David's lawsuit against Sebastian Vance and Chloe Sterling ripped through the city's elite circles like a shockwave. The business journals which had once praised Matteo's Midas touch now feasted on the salacious details of his downfall. Headlines screamed from newsstands. Thorne's empire betrayed from the bedroom. The $1 million mistress. How a femme fatale. Toppled a titan, and the one that made Matteo's stomach clench with shame. The dishwasher's revenge. A wife's humiliation. An empire's ruin. His life became a series of mortifying vignettes. He saw 2 former colleagues at a coffee shop. They saw him exchanged a look and abruptly turned away their backs, a wall of judgment. He overheard his name at a neighboring restaurant table, spoken in hushed, gossiping tones, followed by cruel laughter. He was no longer a formidable player. He was a cautionary tale, a punchline. The legal proceedings were a grueling exercise in humiliation. He sat in a sterile conference room as lawyers deposed Chloe. She was a consummate actress, portraying herself as a lovelorn woman, manipulated by two powerful men, the seductive Matteo and the predatory Vance. She cried on cue her testimony, a masterclass in deflection. But David's forensic accountants had been meticulous. The money trail from Vance's shell corporation to Chloe's consulting firm was undeniable. It was a clear case of industrial espionage. The court eventually ruled in their favor, awarding a substantial financial settlement. Vance's reputation was savaged, and Chloe faced a future of legal troubles and social ostracism. But for Matteo, the victory tasted like ash. Every dollar of the settlement felt like blood money, a compensation for his own monumental foolishness. The Westfield Tower, his dream project, was now in the hands of his rival, a permanent monument to his failure. The soul of his empire. The Aurelian Club was dying. It had become toxic, a place tainted by scandal. The hushed, exclusive atmosphere was replaced by a morbid curiosity. People came to whisper and point at the pantry where the confrontation had allegedly happened. Memberships were cancelled in droves. The laughter and clinking glasses that once signified power now sounded like a death rattle. With a heavy heart, Matteo put it up for sale. He walked through its empty gilded halls one last time, the silence mocking him with memories of his own hubris. He and David used the settlement money and the proceeds from the club's sale not to launch a vengeful comeback, but to perform corporate triage. They downsized, stabilized, and retreated from the high-stakes world of landmark skyscrapers. Their new focus became smaller, more thoughtful projects, restoring historical buildings, developing community-focused mixed-use spaces. It was a quieter, less glamorous existence. Matteo's personal life underwent an even more dramatic demolition. The penthouse, with its panoramic views and crushing silence, became unbearable. Each imported lily reminded him of his careless cruelty. Every piece of designer furniture felt like a prop from a life he no longer recognized. He hired an estate agent and told her to sell everything, including the contents. He walked away with only his clothes, some books, and a single framed photo of his parents. He moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a pre-war building in a leafy, unassuming neighborhood. The contrast was stark. Instead of a silent elevator whisking him to a private foyer, he now heard the cheerful chatter of his neighbors in the hallway. Instead of the scent of ozone from air purifiers, he smelled his neighbor Mrs. Garcia's garlic-heavy cooking wafting through the vents. It was real. It was grounded. And for the first time in over a decade, he felt like he could breathe. This shedding of his old life wasn't enough. He was haunted by the image of Isabella's face in that alleyway. The strength, the clarity, the profound disappointment. He knew he couldn't repair the damage with a grand gesture. The old Matteo would have tried to buy her forgiveness. The new Matteo understood that atonement was not an event, but a process. It had to be built brick by brick from the ground up. Driven by a desperate need to understand the woman he had lost, he made a pilgrimage. He drove his modest sedan to the Bronx, to the streets that had shaped her. He found the location of her family's old trattoria, now a brightly lit laundromat. He parked and just watched for a while, imagining a younger Isabella full of life and laughter, her hands dusted with flour. He saw the world he had once dismissed as humble, and saw it now for what it was, a world of connection, authenticity, and community. A world richer than his penthouse had ever been. He remembered her mentioning a community center, a place she volunteered at in her teens. He found it a few blocks away, a simple brick building with a faded mural on the side. Taking a deep breath, that did little to calm his racing heart. He walked inside. The air smelled of floor wax, strong coffee, and the hopeful energy of children. A warm-faced woman with kind, weary eyes sat at the front desk. A small plaque identified her as Mrs. Diaz, the director. "Can I help you?" she asked, her gaze taking in his expensive, albeit simple attire. He was clearly not from around here. "My name is Matteo Thorne," he said, the name feeling foreign in this context. I was told you sometimes need volunteers. I'd like to help, if you'll have me." Her skepticism was palpable. "We're not a photo op for wealthy businessmen looking to polish their image, Mr. Thorne. This is real work. We need tutors for our after-school program. Kids who are falling behind. It's frustrating. It's not glamorous." "I understand," Matteo said, meeting her gaze directly. "I have time, and I was good at math." His first day was a lesson in humility. He was assigned to a sullen 12-year-old named Leo, who was convinced that fractions were an evil curse invented by adults. Matteo, the man who could structure billion-dollar financing deals in his sleep, found himself utterly stumped at how to explain a common denominator in a way that made sense. He fumbled, he got frustrated, and Leo just stared at him with defiant boredom. At the end of the hour, Matteo felt like a complete failure. But he came back, and the next time he didn't try to lecture. He brought a pizza. He cut it into slices, talking about toppings and sharing, and suddenly Leo's eyes lit up. "Oh, so the bottom number is just how many slices are in the whole pizza." It was a tiny breakthrough, but for Matteo it felt more significant than closing the biggest deal of his career. He was connecting. He was serving. He wasn't taking. He was giving. He never told Isabella he was doing this. It wasn't a performance for her benefit. It was his penance and his path. After 2 months of tutoring, of learning the names of the kids and their stories, he felt ready to do the one thing he had left to do. He sat down to write her a letter. He must have gone through a dozen drafts. The first few were filled with excuses, with pleas for forgiveness. They rang hollow. They were about him. Finally, he understood. The letter couldn't be about what he wanted. It had to be about what he had done. On a simple piece of cream-colored stationery, he wrote from a place of raw, unvarnished truth. "Isabella, I am writing to you, not to ask for anything, but to offer the one thing I have left that is of any value, the truth. You were right about everything. The man you left in that alley was a stranger to me, but I see him clearly now. He was a hollow man, a boy playing king in a castle of glass, terrified that anyone might see how empty it was inside. I filled my life with things, buildings, accounts, praise, because I had failed to build a life of character within myself. I confused admiration with respect and possession with love. I took your light and tried to keep it under a lampshade, because I was afraid it would expose the darkness in me. What I did to you, to us, to the sanctity of our marriage and the coming of our child, was not a mistake. It was a choice born of a deep and profound weakness in my soul. There are no excuses for that, and I will offer none. I hope you find happiness. You deserve a life filled with the same honesty, warmth, and strength that you radiate. I hope our child grows up to have your heart and your integrity. I am finally trying to learn what it means to build something that lasts, not for you or for anyone else to see, but because I owe it to the world to be better than I was. I will not bother you again. I will respect whatever life you choose to build. I ask for nothing. Yours, Matteo. He sent it to Sophia's address, a message in a bottle cast into a vast, silent ocean. He expected no reply, and he received none. Life settled into a quiet, routine, work-tutoring solitude. The gaping wound of Isabella's absence was a constant ache, but it was a clean pain now, one he knew he deserved. Then on a crisp October evening, as he was grading a practice essay on The Great Gatsby, his phone vibrated. An unknown number. His breath caught. "Hello. Matteo." The voice was strained, frantic. It was Sophia. "It's Isabella." His blood ran cold. "Sophia, what is it? Is she okay?" "She's in labor. It's early a few weeks. We're at Lenox Hill Hospital. She didn't want me to call you. She said explicitly not to. But damn it, Matteo, you're the baby's father. I thought you had a right to at least be in the same building." Her voice cracked. "She's scared. I'm on my way." He didn't remember grabbing his coat or running down the stairs. The taxi ride was a blur of traffic and streaking lights, his mind a frantic loop of prayer for her and the baby. He burst into the maternity ward and found Sophia pacing her face, pale with exhaustion. "How is she?" he gasped. "She's stable." The baby's heart rate was dropping, but they've got it under control. It's going to be a while. She looked at him, really looked at him, and the years of animosity in her eyes were replaced with a weary understanding. "She knows I called. She's not happy about it. She didn't say you could go in." "I know." Matteo said, his voice surprisingly calm. He had no rights here. He had forfeited them. "I'm not here to demand anything. I'll just wait. If she needs anything, even for me to leave, just tell me." He found a hard plastic chair in the corner of the waiting room and sat. It was his new penance. He watched the clock on the wall each tick a hammer blow of anxiety. Nurses bustled past, their expressions professionally placid. He heard the joyous cries from another room as a different family was born. He sat invisible, a ghost at the feast. He stayed through the night, a silent, solitary vigil. At 4:17 a.m., a smiling nurse entered the waiting room. "For the family of Isabella Rossi." Matteo and Sophia shot to their feet. "You have a beautiful, healthy baby boy, 7 pounds, 2 ounces. Mum and baby are both tired, but doing perfectly." An explosive sob of pure relief escaped Matteo's lips. Tears he hadn't realized he'd been holding back streamed down his face. A son. He had a son. He sank back into his chair, emotionally spent. He expected that to be the end of it, a second-hand announcement, and then the long, quiet walk back to his empty apartment. He had kept his promise. He waited. An hour later, Sophia emerged from the hallway. Her expression was soft. "She's asking for you, Matteo." His world tilted on its axis. He followed her on unsteady legs, his heart pounding a deafening rhythm against his ribs. She pushed open a door and stepped aside. The room was dim and quiet. Isabella was propped up on pillows, looking exhausted and transcendent. Her face was pale, her hair damp, but she was glowing with a light that no diamond could ever hope to match. And nestled in her arms, wrapped in a simple blue hospital blanket, was the most beautiful thing Matteo had ever seen. She looked up as he entered her eyes, holding his. The ice was gone. The anger was gone. In its place was a fragile, weary curiosity. "Matteo," she whispered. He moved toward the bed as if in a dream, his gaze locked on the tiny human in her arms. "Isabella, he's perfect. His name is Leo," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "It means lion, for strength." She looked from her son's face to his. "I got your letter. Sophia told me about the pizza." He could only nod, a lump the size of a fist lodged in his throat. She took a breath, a small momentous decision passing across her features. She shifted the baby in her arms. Would you like to hold your son?" It was not forgiveness. It was not a reunion. It was something far more precious. It was a possibility. A single fragile thread extended across a chasm of his own making. With hands that trembled, Matteo Thorne, the man who had built towers of glass and steel, reached out and took the small, warm bundle. The baby was so light, yet held more weight and substance than his entire former life. As he looked down at Leo's tiny, sleeping face, at the miniature fingers curled into a fist, the last vestiges of the old Matteo crumbled into dust. The deals, the status, the club, the penthouse, it was all meaningless architecture. This was the foundation. This was the only thing worth building. This was home. Matteo Thorne's story is a powerful, raw reminder that the highest walls we build are often the ones within ourselves. He had to lose everything he thought he wanted to finally discover what he truly needed. It wasn't about the affair or the money. It was about the slow erosion of respect, honesty, and the courage to be vulnerable. Isabella's incredible strength wasn't in her anger, but in her decision to demand truth over comfort and to build a future for her child, free from the poison of deceit. Their journey is far from over, but it leaves us with a question. What are the foundations of our own lives built upon? Are they as solid as we think? If this story moved you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who appreciates a story about real-life struggle and the difficult path to redemption. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell for more compelling stories that explore the depths of the human heart. What do you think Matteo should do next to continue earning back Isabella's trust? Let us know in the comments below.